while we're still in the aftermath of that partial solar eclipse, new moon in Virgo at 29 degrees, we're in the frequency of the new moon. New things were seeded, and that conjunction with the south node is clearing and cleaning away. It's completing things. It's beyond our control because it is the south node. It is the tail that wags the dog, and things that we don't have control over that are simply completing on their own. We're going to be in that ripple effect for the next 6 to 12 months as we enter new cycles. As we did the day after that eclipse, we entered the Libra cycle with the equinox at 0 degrees of a cardinal sign. That's Libra. That signals that now we're in a season change. We're in a change of light codes. So welcome to my channel. My name is Kenlyn Colleen, and I'm super psyched that you're here today. We're going to bring forward a conversation on what is completing with respect to success. I had this conversation with my mother. It was so good that I knew I needed to bring it forward for all of us to hear and to remind myself. And this is a week where there's not a lot of geometry happening. There's not a lot happening in the skies. We're taking a bit of a break. There's upcoming a repeated cycle of a grand water trine, and that's going to bring forth a lot of emotions. So that which we can clear and clean away, make space for, make room for these big emotions as purification, the waters of purification, they will come. So let's take these moments to reorient our thinking as we move forward. So my mom is, we call it the silent generation. So my mom is in the silent generation. If you don't know the silent generation, it's the generation before the baby boomers. And when I told her that, she shook her head. So she knew that she wasn't a baby boomer, even though her date technically is right around the time that the start of the baby boomers. But the silent generation is not a generation that really embraced personal growth, the summer of love, psychedelics. And that's my mom and my dad. They did not embrace that. They were of the prior generation where they did what they were told. And actually, in the fourth turning is here, that silent generation was the last generation to experience increased wealth. Everybody else's wealth as a generation has gone down since the silent generation. Super interesting fact. So now we can start to peel away this narrative around success, these standards that we have around success. So my mother, in her innocence, I'm going to give her that, started asking me questions about my life. Like, she just doesn't understand the gypsy nature of me, or online businesses, or technology, or like the ebbs and flows of our market space. She doesn't even understand my sister, who is a doctor, a naturopath. She doesn't understand certain decisions my sister has made financially, I would say, in terms of career mobility. And so I had to break it down for her, and maybe it's time to break it down for all of us. There are 6 new ways to perceive success as we discard the old paradigm of success. Now, listen carefully, because you want to take inventory on where you've been caught in the old paradigm of success. Even though you mentally might know this, everything I say is not rocket science. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's totally true. But what I want you to realize is that your framework for judging yourself and comparing yourself has to shift. Because as I said, that silent generation, there's no other generation that's making wealth like they did as a whole. There are certainly people who are making wealth and who are buying homes and making multi-million dollars. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about overall the wave of the collective. And it's really important to note that, because there's some kind of idea, especially with the opulence of our culture, like, everybody has marble countertops, when in the 1950s, they had linoleum countertops. Some people don't even know that word, linoleum. That's a horrible word. Anyway, so our standards have been raised. And likewise, this old standard of what is success continues to plague us, to live in our psyches and judge ourselves, when really we are if you're listening to this, I'm going to include you in the we. We're building a new version, a new standard, a new set of standards of success. And thank the goddess, because it's time. So you've heard me mention before, and if you have not, you might want to get my Uranus and Gemini masterclass. It's called the Reinvention Code. I go through the cycles of history. I'm not going to do it here. It takes too long. It's a 41-minute masterclass where we go through the cycles of history, and then I do the cycles of astrology, and then you personally with these 4 reinvention codes. So I'm just going to trust that you have access to that information if you so desire it. And I'm going to kind of jump in to where we are in the cycles of history. And that is that we're completing. You've heard me say this before. We are in massive completion. It's called crisis. It's called winter. And it's probably going to last for the next 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And that tracks the Uranus and Gemini, which is why the masterclass is called Uranus and Gemini, in the Uranus and Gemini era. And so, you know, that beginning, you may know, or if you don't, this winter cycle is the end cycle of 4 seasons. And the beginning season started after World War II. And this is what I was sharing with my mom, that after World War II, we started a new cycle. It was the rebuild. It was the rebuild from war. Even though the United States itself was not subject to war on its land, it was in a war. Its people were in war, and that war shifted the power dynamic. That's when the United States claimed its power as a world power and carved out rules and territory for others. That's the end of this. We're at the end of that cycle. The United States is reckoning with its power. It just had its Pluto return. So, and it's in that frequency of the Pluto return. So post World War II, there was a model of success. Now, you've watched a bunch of movies. Think about, what is that model of success? When we look at the mid to late 40s and the 1950s, well, it was kind of like owning a home was a really big deal. One breadwinner, owning a home, raising your children at home, having a neighborhood, having a car, having a television set. You know, think about the indicia of success. What were the standards of success? You had a job, and your job, you stayed at your job, and you acquired some mastery at your job. It's a total generator model. And it breaks down if the generator is not happy and fulfilled and in their bliss inside of that model, right? We know that now with human design. The generators are here to be in their bliss, because you know what, generators, you are not slaves. You are not here to work away. But it was an industrialized culture. It went from, prior to that, agrarian to industrial. And I mean, at the turn of the century, agrarian. And then that was the saeculum, the 4 seasons prior to this current one that we're closing out. And so that model of success, think about the educational system. It was built for that model of success, how to train people to be basically factory workers, to just do what they're told, sit at their desk, get shit done. We didn't have neurodivergent people. We didn't have people with special needs. If you were handicapped, too bad. You know, you couldn't make it to work, too bad. You know, think about how different it was. So that model was built for factories. It was built for the industrial age. It was built to shape the worker. It was built on a certain level of fear. And that kind of fear and conformity, though, was very much consensual, because we had just had this backlash to individualism. We come together as a community in winter, which we're trying to do now, and we will do, because that's what we do. And then we start to individuate. And then we have the baby boomers and the summer of love and psychedelics and all of the early pioneers who started programs like EST, or who, like Stanislav Grof, you know, they did experiments with their breath and therapy and psychedelics before it was all shut down. That kind of was the response to so much collective mind thinking, conformity, in other words. So there's a context for all of it. I don't want to slam anything. It's just that that was then and this is now. So the new model, the model that we're actually building now as we shift in consciousness, is being built more from our wholeness, from our authenticity, from our truth, from our sovereignty, from our soul alignment. You get what I'm saying? Like that old model is really not interesting to us. It might be something that we cling to in fear because they had it so easy. They had a job, if whatever story we want to make it, except that they sold their souls. And that's okay. They were at that level of consciousness that they were just doing what they could do. And they had just come through a war. And prior to that, the depression. So there was trauma in the field, and just to have a job and be productive and of use was important. So now we've gone through that. Like humanity has experienced that, as well as many other things. And fast forward to today, we're wanting to be more in alignment. We're wanting to be in our leadership, our personal leadership, which means that I'm the leader of myself. And so let's evaluate how you know if you're playing the old game or if you're stepping toward the new. Let's look at 6 new ways, and we'll juxtapose them against the old. And I've got my notes here that I'll be looking at, but just 6 new ways that I see the leadership frequency, or excuse me, that I see the success frequency shifting. And let me know if you do too. And let me know if there are other things that I missed in this. So first, I want to talk about it from a perspective of outer achievement. And outer achievement, like getting the degree, right? Getting the letters after your name, getting all the indicia of success, meaning the markers of success. And that success standard being the one that we talked about, like owning a home and having a stable job that you never quit. And there was like this social contract with your employers that they really weren't going to fire you just because they had shareholders who wanted to downsize you. That didn't happen until later. There was a social contract. So now what we're seeing is that it's not so much about being judged by the output. Now, results are still important. We're not saying results aren't. Metrics are still important, but as a standard of whether or not you're successful is very different than just data on how to do something better. You know, like this YouTube channel, there's tons of data that I can take on as someone who wants to grow her channel. However, I don't have to use them as standards of success. And this is what I was explaining to my mom. Like, you lived in a totally different world. So, of course, my life, my sister's life, anyone else's life doesn't make sense to you. You think we're missing the mark, and you're curious about it, partially judgmental about it, but mostly curious about why we've made the decisions that we've made. And maybe that's you too. Maybe you've had these discussions. I'm kind of hearing like all these discussions and someone like, yes. Oh, and honestly, to be honest, we have to be honest. We've probably judged ourselves, and yet we're still doing this. So I don't notice that I'm conforming to the old standard, but I notice that I'm judging myself by the old standard. That's what I want to end right here. So instead of outer achievement becoming the locus of the standard, like the fulcrum, the basis of the standard, what becomes the basis is your inner alignment. Are you in alignment with your soul? Ask yourself that question. I think one of the ways that came through is, am I in integrity with my nervous system, with my values, with my mission, but also with that wild and wise feminine soul, the one that pulses with the pulse of the universe? Like, am I in alignment with her? That was not even a question at the beginning of this millennial saculum in 1942. Can you imagine? Or 46? No way. So who am I being even when no one is watching? It's not a performance. This is more of my identity. So you can kind of see the difference of being performative and having all the things on paper versus now we're playing an inner game. So that's number one. It's outer achievement versus inner alignment. Number two is the old was measured in income. You know, how much money did you make? I was just listening to a podcast with Ray Dalio, who is a billionaire, who Tony Robbins credits in his financial books. And he's this big guru, became super wealthy at a young age discovered that he really liked the stock market and just worked it. And he was asked the question, is it important to just take the highest paying job or whatever job you can get that pays the most? And he said, no. So that's a man who came from that era, who's updated his files, and he knows the answer to that is no. You have to do what you love to do. Do what doesn't feel like work, is what he said. So the new paradigm is success is measured in energy, not in dollar amount. Now, again, I'm not saying dollar amounts don't matter, because of course you have to pay the bills and buy your food, and you want to buy all your health things to keep your body healthy. Like there's so much of that, right? But it's really, the new is about your capacity. How much capacity can you hold? And are you at capacity? Are you over capacity? Are you in alignment with your capacity? I even think capacity grows the more that you nurture yourself. So it's not how much you build. And I had to learn this lesson big time. It's how much is left of you after you build. So you can start to see that this paradigm is shifting. It's not so concerned with what you can get by selling your soul for the money. It's concerned with being part of the nurturing equation. So number 2 is measured in income, and the new is measured in energy. And I also want to say with that one, is your devotion still intact? Because to me, when you're devoted to that wild and wise feminine soul, that will take you on a very different journey than when you're devoted to the numbers. Let's go to number 3. Number 3 is measured in what you have. So I have a TV, I have a car. You think about the 1940s and that conversation around all these new things. You see sometimes commercials for new gadgets. So there was definitely these new things coming on the scene and people wanting to consume them, and that being a part of the social status. And then fast forward to where we are now, we have all kinds of things like Apple Watches, Apple phones, you name it, as status symbols of what we have, determining, being the standard of our success. And like I said, that's leaving. That's going away. As the more, especially you do this work and you expand and you elevate in your consciousness, that is going away. So the question is, who are you becoming? Not what you have, but who are you becoming? And I think, to me, having entrepreneurship as my main method of making money, it is the crucible for who I'm becoming. And that's why I love it so much. So are you evolving? Are you going up in your worldview? Or are you just staying in the safety and security, or in this outer success model, and you're trapped? We used to call working for law firms and making a ton of money doing really soul killing work, or really work you could do in a couple hours, but then you needed a break to go hiking and to be with other people and do other activities. But because of the billable hour, required you to do them for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, we called that the golden handcuff. And that's more of the outer success model. Like I have all these expenses that I have, like I need to do my nails, I need to do my hair. And I don't know, for dudes, it's maybe stuff like I need to buy the next gadget, or have a Rolex, or have a fast car, whatever those stereotypes are of having, that gives me a status symbol, but also keeps me in prison. So are you up leveling yourself? Are you really not placing your identity anymore in what you have and moving it to who you're being? So that's number 3, measured in what you have, measured by who you're being. So worldview, let me just say, is measured in this capacity to hold more truths. The lower worldview you have a very rigid or myopic way of looking at life. And anything that doesn't fit into your worldview, or your consciousness at that level, you just filter out. You don't even see it. And then you judge other people for how they are. But the more that you expand and you grow, you see the differences, and some differences are better than others. Some make more sense than others. Some are more efficient than others. Some are more just than others. and you learn to discern and make choices along that discerning. That's called an integral worldview. Someday I'll get into that in a video, but not for now. So you can ask yourself in number 3, did that business model that you did, or that work, that job, make you softer? Did it make you more human? Did it make you more aware? That's what we're really after. If a job can do that for you, then you've got the best of both worlds. Now, number 4, let's get into the last 3 of these distinctions. Number 4 is about sacrifice, and the new way is sustainability. So when I think of this, I think of sacrifice. We already talked about burnout and exhaustion, but let's look at sacrifice as in sacrificing the wholeness of your life. And it didn't start off that way. People probably worked just 9 to 5, and then they had time with their spouse, their family, their neighbors. They went on picnics, they went to church, kind of thing. But then this kind of massive sense of productivity and drive for outer success started to consume our culture, which is part of the necessary worldview. We had to go there in order to transcend it. And we lost the forest for the trees, right? We lost the plot. And so what happened was we sacrificed our friends, our family. We, did all this work to date and get married, and we wanted to have a baby so bad. And then we felt the pressure to just perform and work. And it was an internal pressure, maybe also an external pressure. So women, I notice, especially in our community, are just letting and shedding that stuff go. Let it go, let it go. And so, say the sustainability model is that all parts of yourself are included, that we understand actually to have a balanced life, you've got to be fed in different areas of your life. You've got to work out. You got to tend to your physical body. You have to tend to your spiritual body, your emotional body. You get to tend to your relationships and your responsibilities like pets and children, and you get to nurture them. And you're responsible to parent, to teach, to be an active member of the community, to give a shit about what's going on in the world. And you can't do that if you've sacrificed everything. So in this number 4, that's the old model of sacrifice. And the new model is it sustainable? There are companies now, and I was looking at a company called Strategic Coach, because I've listened to many of the audiobooks from the founder. And they give their people 150 days off a year. And they said it's not a benefit. We're not giving this as a benefit. This is just how we roll, because we understand you have a life. And so you can imagine people don't leave that company. They don't have massive turnover because they're super respected in who they be as humans. And I'm just sharing that with you because if you're an entrepreneur that desires to create a model that employs other people or hires independent contractors, you get to think with a new mind of what's sustainable across the board. If you're the worker, you get to say, wow, there are organizations that don't want to extract my soul. I think that's what's possible for the profession I left, which was lawyering. They treated people like they were fungible, like just bill the hours so that those up above in the pyramid could make money. But what if AI takes a lot of those jobs away and it leaves some of just the best thinkers in law, and those thinkers in law reconfigure the way they do work? I mean, this is what's possible. This is the change we are midwifing. All right, number 5, conformity versus authenticity. So as I mentioned, when we started this first saculum, like spring, and now we're all the way in winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. We were in the rebuild after the war. It was very important that society conform and they just get stuff done and they operate as a team. And then that becomes oppressive. And then we have individualism come through, which is more like the 60s. That happened. So we are now in our culture, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, prizing, elevating our uniqueness over conformity. We're seeing, and I think this is different than just basic self-expression, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually perfect. But we're also seeing, at least those of us who study gene keys and human design, that part of the equation now in our culture is for me to be in my uniqueness, because when I'm in my uniqueness, there is no competition. No one can do it like me. They can do something, the same thing, but they do it differently than I do it. So there's no competition in that way. And I'm in my joy, I'm in my genius. And so I'm innovative, I'm excited, I'm working, I'm productive. And it feeds me. There's energy return. It feeds me. It doesn't deplete me. So I think that's the level of authenticity and self-expression that we're playing with now as a future paradigm. And that's why I'm doing a lot of work to help people discover their unique genius, because I see that as the key. And so many people don't see it. And that's okay. We haven't been trained. We haven't gone to school in a way. The school system has been really for conformity. And, 2 + 2 is 4, everybody. And everybody writes that down and then they memorize stuff. Again, that model is for the factory. But what if there's a whole new educational system that helps you flourish in your gifts and identify your gifts and then move along the area in life that is most congruent in alignment with you? I have a cousin who graduated in aerospace engineering, and his father is an aerospace engineer. But when I looked at his unique genius is really along the lines of mental health, pharmaceuticals, understanding biology, pharmacology. And I mentioned at one point, like, why don't you just bag that study and move into this? This is where your heart is. This is where you're studying, but we're not calling it studying. You're on a train to come and see me. And what did you listen to? Podcasts about this. So that's one of the ways that we can flag for ourselves. What would I do if no one were making me do it? All right. So number 5 is like fitting the mold, trying to fit in, trying to meet the standards or the criteria, and versus being my fully expressed authentic self. And I think we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg there. It really starts, as the Gene Key says, in 2027, and that goes for like 400 years. So we get to get good at it as humanity. So finally, let's go into the last distinction, where the old paradigm of success is crashing and the new paradigm is coming through that, like, we're literally birthing. And that is like vanity metrics. And this is more of a new distinction, but it kind of goes along the digital version of what you have: likes, followers, subscribers, these outer metrics that tell you that people like you. And when you look at business models, we realize now that some of those vanity metrics don't even translate to a thriving, sustainable business. They're just simply vanity metrics. So a lot of influencers, a lot of coaches and healers or online people have really shifted off of the vanity metrics into something deeper. And this again has to go with worldview and beingness qualities, that you really want to make an energetic impact. You want that ripple effect to be felt by your work in the world. And you can only have that level of ripple effect if you're operating inside of your genius. And I want to say too, that the iteration, of your genius changes. Rumi said this quote of, "There's many ways to kneel and kiss the ground." There's many ways to be devoted to the inner call, to the wild feminine soul within. And so your job can take on, or your profession or your entrepreneurial venture can take on many messages, many themes over a lifetime, not at the same time. Let me be clear. One problem for one person. I'll just put a plug in for burgeoning entrepreneurs. But real energetic impact, that's so different than vanity metrics. And I think too, and this is why I use certain distinctions that are based from human design in my genius mapping, because not everyone is called to be an influencer. You can find that in someone's chart. Some people are more analyzers or product makers or testers of products, or sales type people, client-based people, like customer service. And other people are disseminators. I'm a disseminator. This is why I love doing this. And if you don't have that code, You either entrained yourself to do something like this, or you're not happy doing this. And then some people stand outside the value chain altogether and they just ask they ask the important questions of, did this thing do what it said it was going to do? Did it transform lives? So everyone has a role in creating value. And I like to support people in finding that as well. So ultimately, when you're in this new model of success, you actually don't work as hard because your aura, your frequency is the one that does the work. You know, especially as a projector, our frequency is penetrating and somebody knows when they want what we have. And they can, if it's in our alignment, in our truth, and in our authority, we can open and allow them to receive. And I always tell my clients, don't do the heavy lifting. It's not that hard. It really is the end of a codependent model in business. And I think this last piece of your energetic impact allows you to be powerful without trying to do things for people. And so we're now looking at, instead of the vanity metrics, what is the depth of your ripple? That's a beautiful question to ask yourself. What level of value are you providing? How are you solving that one problem for that one person if you are an entrepreneur? So I hope you've enjoyed these 6 new paradigm success metrics, and put down in the comments anything else that you've discovered or any other way you would like to say it that you heard me say, because we're really curating this so that we can get in alignment with the new earth, the new consciousness, the new way of being, that the old breakdown and this eclipse breakdown is included, that we're going through creates something new. So I want to thank my mom for opening up this conversation and asking super hard questions. And I want to thank all my teachers for contributing to this discussion on worldviews and cycles, so that each one of us can be more compassionate and not judge ourselves by a dying standard. So let's gather all the positive energy we have generated here and just beam it out and wrap all of us in this gold light, just imagining this gold light circling the globe in this incredibly important time of change. And let's say together, may all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts.